Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Showdown Strategy Show. Bills, Denver Broncos, 47.5-point total. Not going to lie. Surprised me when I saw that on Wednesday. Bet the under on that. Although got cleaned out betting yesterday. Props to CJ Stroud, man. Look, I knew the guy was good. I've been saying it, but I did not think coming into Cincinnati with the Bengals looking like a buzzsaw that they would walk out of there with a win. And in fact, they did. You also got the Tommy DeVito experience. I know on Twitter, our friend Matt Gajewski here with me as always this morning at Matt_Gajewski was very excited about Tommy DeVito getting the nod, getting to watch 4 quarters of him play, and really just a masterclass by the New York Giants offense.
It was a masterclass. If you love watching teams play 10 on 11 for the entire game, the New York Giants are your team. Jets aren't much better, but yeah, Tommy DeVito is the worst quarterback I've ever seen step on a football field. And that is not an exaggeration. I truly believe that.
Ben has said, and on Tuesday, he was very impassioned plea for coaches to listen to him, that like if you have a lost season, what are you doing not doing crazy stuff and, unique plays and different personnel and maybe bringing guys in? You would mention, why don't you just bring in somebody else that at least like we have no idea if they're any good. It is amazing to me that a team like the New York Giants, assuming they start DeVito or Barkley next week and they do this throughout the remainder of the season, what do we have? 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Assuming they don't have a bye, that's 8 weeks. If they do have a bye week, that's 7 more weeks. Let's just say around half a season. That they're just going to completely and utterly waste away a half of a season, not learn anything, so they can roll out a Tommy DeVito or a Matt Barkley every single week. It's mind-numbing dumbness.
Yeah, it's really dumb. And I mean, we're talking about backup quarterbacks. This is the biggest criticism I have of like Jets fans who say like Zach Wilson should be benched or something. It's like, the guy's a backup quarterback. What do you want the Jets to do? Trade a pick they don't have for an unavailable Patrick Mahomes? Like, you don't have any good options. Zach Wilson at least can run. Tommy DeVito can't do anything. I watch more college football than anyone you know. I watch a lot of
probably
Illinois.
Anyone on earth.
Yeah, honestly, that might be true. And Tommy DeVito was horrific at Illinois. The guy was horrific at Syracuse. He had to transfer down to Illinois. The team was downright horrible. He might be, I don't know, the 10th best quarterback in the Big Ten. Now he's starting for the New York Giants. So, I mean, like, my criticism is you can't find somebody better than him. There are good college quarterbacks that aren't on NFL teams. There are athletes that could play the position and do more than DeVito, because DeVito can't run, he can't catch, he can't throw, he can't do anything. It's literally 10 on 11. Kendall Hinton. He was a better quarterback option than DeVito because he's an athlete. He can run, he can catch, he can do things that DeVito can. He at least opens your playbook. So, I mean, the Giants are trying. People that say they're tanking, you're wrong. They're not. You can't tank in the NFL. One, because the lifespan of a coach is too short. If you tank, you're going to get fired. So nobody wants to do that. Same with GMs. Second, this team, I mean, if they were completely tanking, why is Barkley playing? Why are they playing Jalen Hyatt, your stud defenders? Like, they're not tanking. They're actually trying to trot out Tommy DeVito, thinking he's the best option available to them when he's not. It's mind-blowing to me. I can't. The Giants should be relegated to like the MAC. I just can't watch this. He couldn't start for the New Jersey Generals. He couldn't.
You don't think so?
No. Their quarterback's name is DeAndre something. I can't remember. He's a better option because he can run. There's like 5 quarterbacks in the XFL, USFL that I would rather have than Tommy DeVito. Like, I do not think he would start for every USFL or XFL team. That's how bad he is.
Who was the guy that the Patriots brought in, like, as a receiver, but converted Malik Cunningham?
He's way better than DeVito. He was a good college quarterback.
Is he even on a roster right now?
I'm not sure, but there's a lot of options. Like Matt Corral's another guy. Like, I mean, I could just think of amazing college quarterbacks, like dual threat quarterbacks that you would rather have over DeVito.
It doesn't make any sense. Malik Cunningham, I think he's on the practice squad. I don't know, but they can just pick. It's stupid, man. You're right. Okay. Let's just put let's just running back has the shortest lifespan of any position out there. Let's just continue to pack mileage on Saquon Barkley. I know that they gave him the franchise tender, but still, let's just pack mileage on him and trot out Tommy DeVito. It doesn't make any sense. By the way, happy to have you guys with us. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. Take 1 single second to atone for your sins here on a Monday morning. Hopefully you guys had a better Sunday than I did. Better Sunday than Ben did. I know we were going back and forth a little bit about this one yesterday. I mean, I got back in the Top Shot streets last night. That's how bad things got during that Raiders-Jets game. Bought a legendary Tyrese Maxey to drown away the pain. One more thing, though. But yeah, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you're subscribed to our podcasts as well, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts. All of this stuff goes in podcast form. Maybe you don't have YouTube Premium. You want to skip the ads. You want to use you want to close your phone. No better way to do it than that. Plus, we have podcast exclusive content that you can't find anywhere other than on podcast platforms like the one Ben and I will do tomorrow. I promise it'll be valuable to all of you. But what in the world is up with Tony Pollard at this point? I mean, I know the game just didn't really swing in his favor, and Dak Prescott and company just did whatever they wanted through the air. You couldn't have a more disappointing season for a running back when you factor in the hype and the salary from a fantasy standpoint that has been attached to him all season long. Yesterday, I'm not saying it's the nail in the coffin because that's kind of the dumb way to look at things, but it certainly feels like Tony Pollard at this stage of the game, he hasn't scored since week 1, Matt, and he's still one of the league leaders in goal line touches.
Yeah, that is truly wild. And I mean, there's been a lot of weird stuff in his box scores, like kind of an absurd amount. Penalties on touchdowns, like he dropped a screen pass that went off his face mask right by the end zone in one of the games. That was a couple weeks ago. But at this point, I think we could still play him. Like, I'm just waiting for this breakout performance from Tony Pollard, and there's a few reasons. One, he's still getting pretty good work. I wouldn't look too much into last game's box score. Rico Dowdle was just cleaning up against the Giants at the end of the game, so he ends up with 12 carries and a score. A lot of that wasn't when the game was competitive. Not that it was ever competitive. But Pollard, he's still attached to one of the best offenses in the NFL. He still plays the running back position, which we know just about anyone can play if you have volume and have good fantasy production. So I'm just going to keep buying low. I'm hoping to hit one of these weeks big with him. Otherwise, I'll probably go broke. But at this point, I don't see how we fade him still. Like, his price is going to come down. The volume's still good. The offense is elite. Man, I think we have to continue buying.
You know, the crazy part, though, is that it hasn't been a buy low spot.
Last week his price was pretty high still.
Yeah, and his ownership wasn't low. I don't know. It's pretty wild. I don't disagree with you, but it's just, I'll tell you what, clicking his name going forward is not going to feel good. Hopefully the ownership comes down, but they got Carolina this week. They got Carolina coming up. So, you know, is it just going to be more of the same where people go, yeah, I'm going straight back to Tony Pollard again. I don't care. Oh, let's see. Salaries are up. He is 6,600 against Carolina.
I think it's a little cheap, but probably fair. He's going to be owned.
Yeah, he's probably going to be like 20% owned against Carolina. And you're probably going to have to go back to it. And then you and I will return next Monday and have a very similar conversation to the one we're having right now. Anyway, we got Broncos, we got Bills. Glad you guys are hanging with us here on a Monday morning. You mentioned it to me right as I jumped on here before we started the show. Salaries compared to what we saw on Thursday. What was Thursday? Bears, Panthers?
Yes, that electric game.
Bryce Young, man, he stinks. Compared to what we saw on Thursday, this pricing is egregiously high. I mean, and I'm not even talking about, and I know you weren't when you mentioned it to me, you're not just talking about the top end guys. I mean, if you want to go down to the bottom, go for it. You're talking Adam Troutman, Chris Manhertz. You're talking Lil Jordan Humphrey. That's what we're getting into today. Okay. Brace yourselves, buckle up, because Matt, some of these salaries, as far as like making a lineup that you feel remotely comfortable with, ain't going to be easy.
No, and I think a lot of people are going to be funneled to the same bad plays because of pricing, Adam Troutman being the main one. So it's kind of like you really have to differentiate yourself at captain. You kind of have to differentiate yourself between the studs because we don't have a lot of value options. And Adam Troutman being the stone min is really the only guy below 1,000 or even near 1,000 that's somewhat playable with confidence. I think we're going to be looking at a lot of potential duplication, making ownership pretty important today just because of the tightness of the slate. It's going to be a weird one.
Yeah, Adam Troutman, we had in the top single game in Showdown plays tool. Matt, you guys know if you've watched this is the tool that we kind of lean on from week to week, slate to slate, talking showdowns, because you're getting not just ownership at captain and utility ownership projections, but you're getting the top play probability, the likelihood that they're the top overall play, optimal captain percentage, optimal utility percentage, leverage score, all of that good stuff. Adam Troutman by far the highest owned cheap play. Now only 13% at utility, about 2% at captain, because people are just, you know what? I actually see why. At first I saw 2% captain and I'm thinking, Matt, there's no way people are putting 2% Adam Troutman at captain. But now I kind of get it because they're just going to try. That's the only way that they're going to be able to jam anyone else. It's almost like the minimum salary guys, the dead min guys, the $200 players, for not because of volume, but just because of snap share and the salary relief. It's almost like those guys are more appealing than the mid-range guys because the mid-range guys are wildly overpriced.
Yeah, I agree with you. And man, I don't know if I can captain Troutman.
I'm not saying you should.
No, I'm just doing the theory. I'm doing the mental exercise, you know.
I'm just saying I can see why he's not 0.01% owned a captain, because there's other guys that are down there that are, $4,000 when they should be 1,000.
Yeah, most of the slate is like that. I was talking to you before the show. It's like they turned up pricing 10% onto every player and forgot to include Troutman in it. So I don't know. It's going to be a tough slate, but I'm sort of with you. Rather than play the overpriced mid-range and end up with questionable workloads for a lot of players, I think I'd rather just go all the way up and then play Troutman and try to differentiate between a lot of the elite players rather than go this mid-range route, which, I mean, I'm not really excited about much in the mid-range, to be honest with you.
Well, let's dive into it. Before we do, if you guys aren't at Owner's Box yet, you're missing out. Up to $500 first match deposit bonus. Granted, if you have the means to do so, take advantage of that. But more than anything else, Ben and I harped on this for a while yesterday. The overlay that we've been seeing there is more than significant all season long. All season long. We've had subs and viewers recently taking these contests down as well. Drew took down 20K, Drew D, a couple weeks ago in the main contest on Sunday. We had a bunch of our guys running hot on Owner's Box. It's funny too. They're like, I'm really starting to get the hang of this super flex format on the main slate, but also for Showdown, we had guys taking down the mini max, taking second and third in the mini max, shipping the big Showdown contest a few weeks ago. Guy did it in the parking lot, watching our show after we ran the Sims. All of our tools too. If you're a Sims member, if you're a Sims Data or Max, if you have our subscriptions, we have the Sims tool for Owner's Box, ownership, player projection, contest generator. Everything built into our site has Owner's Box as well. But if you're not there yet, what a way to take advantage of overlay. The match deposit bonus is nice for sure, because sites like DraftKings and FanDuel aren't giving you that. And by no means am I suggesting you stop playing there. Just use this as a complementary piece among what you're already doing. But I don't know, Matt. It's hard to stress enough how big the overlay comes into play when you're never getting that on DraftKings or FanDuel. You're never getting, like, it was an hour and a half, less than an hour and a half until lock yesterday. 20K up top in their big contest for Sunday, and it was 34% filled. You're just never getting that anywhere else.
No, it's going to make a big deal to your bottom line at the end of the year. Even if you don't end up taking one down, your cash rates are higher. You're going to finish higher than you normally would in these contests. Playing against fewer people is the most important thing to winning in DFS if you can find it. Again, those of you used to DraftKings and FanDuel, you don't find overlays frequently. They're basically giving it to you for free, and it's going to be there on a week-to-week basis. So you don't even have to check in on Sunday. This is like a consistent thing at this point. start your process now, get acquainted with the site, figure out what you want to do with our tools, and then you can prepare for this because we have a lot of time now and we have a big sample of this overlaying week in, week out.
100%. So check it out. They got Showdown contest tonight. Super flex for main slate, meaning you never have to play a D. You can super flex in a quarterback. Pretty cool site, man. Up to $500 first match deposit bonus, and the overlay has been big. Link in the description and in chat if you want to get in on that. And if you have an ad blocker, make sure just turn that off for a second when you click it, and then you can turn it back on, of course. Also, it might ask you for a promo code. I get this question all the time. You don't need it. As long as you use the link, you don't need a promo code to get any of that. So Owner's Box, sponsor of the show, link in the description and in the chat. Let's talk about the Broncos. This one's moved down to 7. I doubt it moves through 7, but this was, I think, 8.5 earlier in the week. 47.5 point total. I honestly was a bit surprised to see this because Denver's defense has been playing better. I know you could make the argument, and I would assume this is what you might do, Matt, that the Buffalo Bills defense is not good right now and they're dealing with a lot of injuries. I still am not one to place ample faith in the Denver Broncos offense, though. So, we'll see where this one goes. But when you're talking about the Russell Wilson spots with Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, we'll get to the other guys in a moment. Courtland Sutton, to me, the reason he just stands out every single week, if we're talking, and we haven't gotten many primetime games for the Broncos lost their privileges last year to be on every fucking primetime site that we had. But Courtland Sutton, that price point to me is really, really good. And I'll give you one reason why. His target share has been unappealing in the sense that nobody's just pulling away with these opportunities. If you were to go look at end zone targets this year, Courtland Sutton has dominated end zone targets for the Denver Broncos, absolutely dominated end zone targets for the Broncos. And he has 6 touchdowns on the season. All 6 of them have come on end zone targets inside like the 22-yard line. That to me is enough to go, hey, the opportunities could be there on a slate like this. Believe it or not, he does have 2 touchdown upside. And this is by far their go-to guy in the end zone, hands down, undisputed.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that the price difference between these two guys, Jeudy and Sutton, isn't a little wider at this point. You're basically getting to decide. If you're not playing them both, you basically can just decide one or the other. And I think you made a really strong case for Sutton. Not only does he have more targets just altogether, but that end zone role is monstrous. Jeudy only has 3 red zone targets and 1 end zone target the whole year. So if you're playing Jeudy, you're kind of just banking on this like air yards deep threat role, more of a big play guy, if you will, where Sutton, I think, has the more bankable opportunity, not just with more targets, but that role near the goal line. So I prefer him just straight up 1-to-1. It's a place where I disagree with the tools where we're giving Jeudy a bit more positive leverage. I think some of that just due to ownership. Sutton will be more owned, it appears, but I think he's still the better play, in my opinion. He's the guy I would rather have too.
Sutton has 13 red zone targets this year. For a Denver Broncos team, that's pretty high, right? I mean, for the Broncos, who haven't, lived in the red zone, pretty good. 8 end zone targets, 6 touchdowns. You're right. Jeudy has one end zone target. I'm not saying he can't get him, but Courtland Sutton is clearly, and why would he not be? Courtland Sutton, look, despite his many flaws, and we've seen them over the years, this guy can come down with 50-50 balls pretty well. Like we've seen him come down like with that my ball mentality very often on difficult catches to make. Yeah,
he's really good at it, and it makes a lot of sense. Judy's more of a separator. Yes. So near the goal line, there's less opportunities due to that. You're just working with less space. Throwing the ball to your contested catch receiver makes a lot of sense in a lot of those situations. And I'm not saying he can't separate. He's also good at that too. But ultimately, for DFS purposes, most of the targets in this offense flow through these 2 players, and they're significantly cheaper than the players on the Buffalo side. So even as underdogs, even if you don't trust Denver, think about playing, Russell Wilson, Sutton, and Jeudy. It's like a hell of a lot easier than playing Josh Allen, Diggs, and whatever secondary receiver you prefer, Kincaid, Shakir, even that. Like you could play Shakir, Allen, and Diggs, and it's more expensive than this trio you can play for Denver. So right away, that's why I think they pop so much in the tools. And even though it's uncomfortable, we need to be considering these Denver guys. And I think Judy and Cortland Sutton, honestly, are my two favorites.
Isn't it kind of crazy that when you look at the pricing on this slate, 5 of the top 6 players are Buffalo Bills. And the only one that isn't is Russell Wilson because he's a quarterback. It's Buffalo, Buffalo, Buffalo. So Allen, Diggs, Cook, Wilson, Kincaid, Davis. Then it's Williams, Sutton, Judy. All 3 of their top skill players are between 68 and 7,200. Like you were just saying right there, it's way easier to play that. Now, you might not feel as good about it, but the discrepancy in price points there, like, let me give you an example. I don't know why James Cook is $3,000 more expensive than Javonte Williams.
I don't know either. Someone took the day off at DraftKings today pricing the slate. I don't know. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Buffalo is a 7-point favorite. The total's decent. So yeah, these guys should be expensive, but can we really justify a 3,000 price gap between these guys when the more expensive players in a timeshare and Javonte Williams, if you look at even just box score hunt, DraftKings, whoever does this, you can clearly see Javonte's working ahead of the other guys.
He had 27 carries last game.
Yeah, I mean, it's a clear upward trend. He's entering sort of like feature back light category. I don't know, he's seeing more work than players like Jahmyr Gibbs now who are in timeshares. Like, he might handle 80% of the touches tonight for this backfield.
Yeah. And, we've been talking about this, that you could see he was coming along. He has looked good, even in the first Kansas City and then the Green Bay game, averaged north of 5 yards per attempt. He was running hard, looked fully healthy. Last game against Kansas City, he wasn't exactly efficient, but guy had 30 touches. Honestly, maybe I'm going out on a limb here, but because I haven't looked over the entirety. We look over a lot of this together on the strategy show, kind of try and lay the foundation. Javonte Williams seems like the best value on the slate to me right now. And it's not often that we're getting positive leverage scores for running backs in our top plays tool, as you always talk about. Javonte Williams is one of the highest leverage guys that we have on this slate.
I think it's mainly pricing. Everybody else is super expensive.
Yeah.
And he's one of the cheaper guys with a bankable role. Not to mention an ascending role, which I think our projections are very good at capturing. So I like Javonte Williams a ton. It's crazy. You rank your top 3 or 4 plays on this slate, they might all be Broncos. And I think it makes sense even as underdogs. And I mean, yeah, the efficiency wasn't there for Javonte last week, but he also played the Chiefs, who have an amazing defense this year. But all this to say, kind of to break it down for DFS purposes in the context of this slate, I'm going to try to play at least 2 of these Broncos skill position players. So that would be Javonte, Sutton, and Judy. When you include Wilson, I think a lot of them will have 3 of these Broncos guys, and then filling out the rest of my lineup from there, likely with 2 Bills studs if I can, and then a scrub somewhere else.
What about Jaleel McLaughlin? He's been relegated now to like the clear backup behind Javonte Williams, but he's been wildly efficient with his touches. I mean, wildly efficient with his ability every time he touches the ball to rack up some yardage. He has 2+ targets now in 5 straight games. He's cheap, but at the same time, is he cheap enough for that workload? That's kind of tough, right? Because you're talking anywhere between 4 to 7 total opportunities.
I think it's a decent price on him. I would like it to be a little cheaper, but it's basically, do you want to play him or Troutman, him or Pirine? I think Troutman's probably going to be the most owned punt play. So if we get 4 or 5 touches out of McLaughlin, some of them are targets. Like Troutman, we know he's not good. He just plays a ton, and that's why his projection is a little more secure. But if you get one big play out of McLaughlin, you get an end zone look, you get a couple targets out of the backfield, that might be enough to just outscore Troutman straight up. So for those of you that are building lineups and you have the extra salary to get up to McLaughlin, that's something I actually like doing. I don't care if you use him and Javonte together. The thesis for the McLaughlin play is not that we think he's going to outcarry Javonte or take on a larger role. It's strictly a salary thing. Like, he's the avenue to get your studs. So him and Javonte being in the same lineup doesn't really cross my mind at all. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, also fine with me. I think I'm probably going to be over the weight to the field on McLaughlin tonight, as disgusting as that sounds.
It feels disgusting, but I don't hate it. I really don't. By the way, Dimitri, welcome to the team, brother. Yeah, if you guys want to join, get those super chat, free super chats, custom emoji, and the sweet badges. I mean, it's all about those. Steven's got that nice 2-year badge down there. We're going to have to figure out a way to get a 3-year badge at some point. I don't know how, because you can only have so many, but we will figure this out. Yeah, right down below, I think under the thumbs up, which I'm sure you've hit already. So I'm just looking over this spot in Buffalo. You know, they haven't allowed a lot of rushing yards, the Bills recently. I also don't know how much of that is smoke and mirrors. You and I did a show last, I don't know. It was one of these days. It was when the Chargers were on against whoever the hell, maybe the Bears or something. I don't remember that, but it was a primetime game. And I said that I was like, this Chargers run defense is pedestrian. And somebody commented after the video. By the way, always feel free to leave a comment down below. I certainly read them. And he's like this dummy just said the Chargers run defense is pedestrian. And then he's like, they're top this and this, top and this, top. It's like, yeah, but look who they faced. And then yesterday we saw them gutted by Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery in the first half, just absolutely gutted. Well, I kind of feel that the Bills have some paper tiger mechanism here as well, because Cincinnati's run game stinks. Cincinnati can't rack up rushing yards against anybody. Tampa Bay, they can't run at all. Doesn't matter who they're facing. That is a bad run offense. Patriots. I mean, you had the Giants rack up 132 rushing yards, the Jags 196, Miami 142. Washington run game largely stinks. They had 100 plus. Raiders, that run game all season outside of a couple blips on the radar, they stuffed them, but the Raiders abandoned the run early in that game. Jets had 172 rushing yards. All I'm saying is when you look at this through the box score, through the games, the matchups they faced, the Bills run defense, you'd say on the surface isn't bad. I'm not convinced, particularly with some of the injuries that they've been dealt, that this Bills run defense is going to hold up week over week when they face even semi-decent rushing attacks.
Yeah, I mean, when you're trying to evaluate these things, use your context, and opponents are definitely something that you should be looking at if you're just trying to peruse yards per carry stats allowed or something like that. But I also like to just fall back on the player personnel of these teams when I'm trying to make informed decisions. Like, who do these players have? Did I like them coming into the year? What did I think of this defense ahead of time? And with the injuries, I think you can argue that the path to least resistance is over the top against this Bills secondary that's so hurt. So that could be another factor. You know, teams want the easiest matchup you can definitely throw on them. But can you run? I certainly think you can, even with the strength of the team being up front. They're down Matt Milano. He's their best linebacker and run defender. Their defensive line strength is edge rushing. Like Von Miller, Leonard Floyd, Gregory Rousseau, AJ Epinesa, they're great on the edges and pass rushing. But on the interior, they're a little weak too. So I think if teams choose to run on them, they certainly can. I don't trust Russell Wilson, so I think it would behoove Denver to try to at least get their ground game going to open up the pass over the top. All this to say, I'm not scared of the matchup for Javonte Williams, McLaughlin, P. Ryan if he plays a snap or two. I think you can move the ball in Buffalo on the ground and through the air.
Who's their best run stopper? Ed Oliver?
I would say so.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't disagree. You could definitely, they definitely want to target him through the air, but it is Russell Wilson, as you just astutely pointed out. It's still Russell Wilson.
To attack the weakness of the Bills defense through the air, you have to be able to throw.
Yeah. Here, let me just lay it out like this. I'll put it in simpler terms. I'm not afraid to attack the Bills' run defense just because they've stymied a few bad rushing attacks over the past few weeks. Put it that way.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
All right. We'll get to captains here in a second. We'll get to captains in a second. But what do we want to do with because we talked about Javonte, we talked about Jaleel McLaughlin. Is there anything you want to say on Samaje Perine?
I think he stinks, and I think he's at risk of playing 0 snaps.
For real, you think it could just be Javonte and Jaleel Will? I mean, or McLaughlin. It really should be at this point.
I think it. Yeah, I don't think that's likely. I'll rephrase it. That's kind of me being biased because you can look at the underlying data. He's by far the worst running back in this offense. But for whatever reason, coaches continue to trust him. So, I mean, I would probably project this 65-70% to Javonte Williams, and then whatever's left split between McLaughlin and Perine. I would guess they use McLaughlin more just based on the efficiency, but there's a pretty long track record of Sean Payton not using his efficient players. So, I mean, I don't think we can bank on that. And it kind of leads us to a certain Marvin Mims, who
I knew you were going there. Yeah.
continues to be a role player for this team, who I love, but man, Sean Payton, someone needs to ask him some questions. I don't know if he's all there, man. Like, I remember a couple of weeks ago, he was asked about Marvin Mims, and the way he was answering questions, it appeared as if he truly didn't know how many snaps he was playing. People would be like, why aren't you playing Marvin Mims more? And he'd say things like, oh, well, he had this amount of production. It's like, yeah, dude, he had that on 4 snaps. You had the chance to play him for 65 snaps. What are you doing? I don't know what Sean Payton, man.
Me neither. I also don't understand that, this is a guy that they were using downfield in 3 straight games. He had a 60-yard reception, a 50-yard, a 38, a 48-yard reception. Literally, he had a 60-yard reception, a 53-yard reception, a 38-yard reception, and a 48-yard reception in the span of 3 games. And then they go, all right, you know what we're going to start doing? We're going to start throwing it to him at the line of scrimmage. When we do, we're going to target him 3 times over the next 4 games, and all 3 of those targets are going to be at the line of scrimmage. So not only are they not utilizing him, but when they do on that 1 target per game, instead of attempting something downfield, like he had 1 target with 1 reception for 0 yards last game. Week 5, 1 reception for 4 yards on 1 target. So now you're not even going to take some shots downfield on Marvin Mims? What is going on?
I don't know. He's the perfect complement to Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. If you were to create like a 3 wide receiver set in a lab, I think most coaches would want some separator slot receiver type like Jerry Jeudy, 1 big bodied contested catch receiver that you can use short yardage in the end zone, and a field stretcher to open it up. A ton of teams comprise their receiving core like this, and that's the Marvin Mims skill set. He's been doing that since his Oklahoma days, stretching the field and creating separation downfield with big plays. So I don't know, man. Like, I don't know what they're doing with him. It just flat out doesn't make sense to me. It's not like they haven't had success with it in the past. Their O-line can't pass protect. Wilson can't do it. They've literally done it before. So I don't understand the changes. It's just another reason with Sean Payton that I don't understand what he's doing or what's going on. Bring back Nathaniel Hackett. I hope Nathaniel Hackett just body bags Sean Payton at the end of this year.
I don't know.
After Payton dissed him, that coward.
I don't know if Hackett would help.
I don't think he would either. This is a joke mostly. I say this in jest, but Sean Payton, you've seen the interview where he disses Nathaniel Hackett at the end of the season, then he does the exact same thing.
I know. That's the worst part, where he's like, everything they did, we're going to do differently. And then he does everything the same.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Who knows, man? Are you how much Marvin Mims do you, I've been so tempted, and we've had a few primetime games with these teams, Kansas City, Denver, they played week 6 on primetime. They've had some primetime spots, but at this point, unless something changes dramatically, you're talking about maybe 1 target.
He's definitely negatively leveraged, which I understand, extremely volatile, and he's expensive. So you can save almost $4,000 going down to Troutman. You can save $3,000 by playing McLaughlin. There's better players price adjusted than him, but I also kind of come back to, out of this group, who can really break a slate for me? And I think the only player down here that can do that is Marvin Mims.
Yeah.
So I'm a little conflicted with him right now. I'm not sure where I'm going to come in personally tonight, but he's a player I might artificially bump up. And I want to at least have a subset of my lineups with Marvin Mims, if that makes sense, because of his game-breaking ability. if Sean Payton gets it together and uses him the way he should. Again, it's unlikely, it's volatile, but I mean, he can do it. So I don't want to just have this guy as a complete zero in my lineups.
No, you don't. It's just there's nothing yet that would suggest that he's going to be involved more, because we're closing out week 10. That's the only thing. What's his ownership look like right now?
It's decently high. It's higher than I thought it was going to be.
Is it?
He's 13% in the flex.
Yeah.
Which I get. You're debating between McLaughlin, Troutman, P. Ryan. Like, who down here do people want to click? Marvin Mims is at least like the shiny new toy. I anticipate people do click him, but I don't know. There's just not a lot of options.
What about the rest of this team then? You're getting into the Lil Jordan Humphrey. We talked Mims. Traquan Smith played 10 snaps last game. Brandon Johnson wasn't on the field. Was he a healthy inactive? Did he just not play, or was he hurt? I can't remember.
I believe he was hurt.
Oh, he's on the IR.
Either.
He's on the IR. Okay. That's what I thought. That's what I thought, he was out. But yeah, so that's what we're working with. And then it's Adam Troutman playing 82% of snaps. He's minimum salary, not targeted frequently, but he's going to be the chalk as far as the cheapest bottom of the barrel guys go, just because he's on the field. And then Chris Manhertz, 55% of snaps last week as well. How do you reconcile this bottom tier of pass catchers, if you want to call them that, for the Denver Broncos?
Manhertz only ran 6 routes, which is tough. They just used him as a blocker. So even though he had a good snap share, his route share was poor. It's probably Lil Jordan Humphrey, dude. Like, he had the same amount of routes as Marvin Mims, which is egregious. Like, we just saw Josh McDaniels get crucified for doing this, basically trying to turn Vegas into New England West. Sean Payton is turning Denver into New Orleans West. Like, Troutman, Lil Jordan Humphrey, Traquan Smith. He is all the awful players from New Orleans now getting snaps over legitimately good players in Denver. With that said, for DFS purposes, Lil Jordan Humphrey plays a lot. He might suck, but he's on the field. And his route share is probably going to be somewhere between like 40 and 50% tonight. On a slate that's tightly priced, he needs to be considered because he's so cheap. I don't love it. I think the player is awful. And this is more of an indictment on Payton, but for DFS, he needs to be considered.
The only thing I'll say about Troutman is he's second on the team with 7 red zone targets, 2 end zone targets. Brandon Johnson was actually a guy they used pretty frequently in the end zone. He's on the IR. You know, so of the guys available today, Troutman actually has on the season seen the second most opportunities in the red zone and in the end zone. It's not a lot, but it's, you know, around 1 red zone target per game, minimum salary. I'll say this. I do get why he's not popular, but I do get why he's the highest owned minimum salary option. 82% of snaps last week, no targets. But, you know, you're playing for 2 targets and hopefully one of them in the end zone. That's what you're playing for down here at any of these guys.
Yep, absolutely. I don't know what else to say. These are fireable offenses by Sean Payton, but for DFS, it leads to some cheap volume.
Who's your favorite captain for the Broncos?
I think it's Javonte. Even though the game script doesn't project to go in his favor, ascending workload, and he saves you a lot of salary compared to the Bills guys. I would say my top 2 are Javonte and Sutton. I have a little bit of trouble parsing between the 2 of them, but those are my 2 favorites right now.
All right. Hey, if you guys aren't on Vivid Picks yet, before we get into the Bills, you know, Prize Picks and Underdog and all of these others that are kind of blowing up. Vivid's doing the same thing, except unlike the others, they're offering a $300 first match deposit bonus. And it's only available through us with this partnership, with the link in the description and in chat. If you were to go on the Vivid Picks right now, it's a $100 standard deposit bonus. Right now with us, $300. Also, whatever you deposit, you're also getting a $25 secure play. So if your first entry loses, you're getting it refunded up to $25. So if it's $25 and you lose, you got site credit now, $25, not including up to $300 first match deposit bonus. That's huge. As far as these pick'em DFS sites go, where you're just taking more or less the over, the under on all of these numbers, right? Whether it's like Javonte Williams rushing yards today, Cortland Sutton receiving yards, Russell Wilson passing touchdowns, all of that. Putting them into a lineup, giving yourself an opportunity to look, the more you put into a lineup, the more you put into a card, the higher your payout potential is. But in a case like this, you could just rip off a massive card, massive lineup with a massive potential payout when you're getting a $25 secure play, but only through us, $300 first match deposit bonus. Anywhere else you go, it's $100. And I say it all the time with sports books, the smartest thing you can do is diversify. Make sure you're on as many books as possible, not just because you're getting all of the bonus bets and all of the first match deposit bonuses, but now because you can say, all right, well, this game is 3.5 here. It's 3 here. If you took the Panthers at 3 on Thursday, you would have pushed. If you took them at 3.5 where they were out on many books, you would have won. Same thing goes for props like this, getting the best number all of the time. And also, these sites do free squares, like over a half a total yard, over half a passing yard, whatever. All of that's over half a point for Steph Curry. Make sure that you're getting those free squares and these bonuses and these discounts everywhere, not just on Prize Picks or not just here. Vivid Picks, $300 first match deposit bonus and a $25 secure play, particularly if you're in these non-legal betting states. No better way to get it done than right now at Vivid Picks. So we have that link in the description and the chat as well. We're talking the Buffalo Bills. And all of them, this is how we have to kick off the Bills. It's not, hey, do you like Stephon Diggs today? Or do you like Josh Allen, 7-point home favorites? But how do you work these teams, these lineups with Bills when they are so expensive, including a $10,000 James Cook?
I'm definitely not playing a lot of him with his volume being highly questionable and him being so close in price to Diggs and Allen. If you can, I want to jam Diggs and Allen, but I think it's exceedingly difficult. To do so, they basically have to be the only two studs you play. I think you're kind of funneled automatically into Adam Troutman or another min-price guy, Lil Jordan Humphrey. And then you have to fill out your lineup with 3 mid-range guys. So I also think the Diggs-Allen stack, if one of them is in the captain spot, is going to be heavily duplicated no matter who you use there, which is fine for small field tournaments. You don't really care. You can differentiate enough to be contrarian there. But in like Million Maker style stuff, I think there's a 500K tonight, not a Million Maker, but this is going to be a really duplicated construction. So I almost like just playing Diggs and Allen in the flex and trying to find a more contrarian captain to differentiate myself, if that makes sense. Just because of some of the duplication worries I think we're going to see with one of these guys up at the top in the captain spot.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I will say the price point, the sticker shock on a guy like Dalton Kincaid, I guess it's kind of high, but he has been really involved. Dawson Knox went out, and now you've seen 84 and 90% of snaps over the last 2 weeks. Quentin Morris played 2 snaps last game. So, yeah, they were running a lot of 2 tight ends, a lot of 12 personnel when it was Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox in there. That has flipped entirely on its head. It is 100% Dalton Kincaid at the tight end position right now. 84 and 90% of snaps in the 2 games that Dawson Knox has missed.
I love Kincaid. I like him a lot at captain, which is a disagreement between me and the projections right now. But as I was building this morning, I think you're going to run into less duplication with Kincaid at the captain. And to speak briefly to his role, I think he's essentially the wide receiver 2 now. Gabe Davis.
He has to be, right?
Yeah, Gabe Davis just not involved enough to have that claim anymore. So it's Kincaid, and I think if you view him as the wide receiver 2, I don't think he's quite as overpriced as some of the other guys on this team. And then in the captain spot, he allows different construction. So if you play Kincaid in the captain, you can very easily play Allen and Diggs if you punt. And then you're stuck in the mid-range, which has a lot of options, like this 7K-ish mid-range. You can play Sutton, Judy, Javonte. So I don't think you're going to run into as many of the duplication problems that we see with Allen and Diggs at captain. And I honestly don't think you're foregoing that much, taking the very clear Bills wide receiver 2 at this point. So Kincaid, I think, is actually a guy I'm going to be pretty overweight to, especially in the captain spot.
I'm with you. And I know we did see that Gabe Davis big 9 reception, 12 target game 2 weeks ago on Monday night against Tampa Bay. But yeah, blanked last week. 2 targets, no receptions. Pretty crazy. You look at targets per route run. Targets per route run. Or sorry, percent of targets per route run. Or no, they're targeted on this percent of routes run. I always mess up how to say that.
No, you had it right the first time. Targets per route run.
You're right. I did.
You were on it. Yeah.
I just didn't use percentage. You're right. Dalton Kincaid, since Dawson Knox went out, 23% targets per route run. That is really high. Gabe Davis at 17, Diggs at 19.5. 23% targets per route run is pretty significant for Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah, the tight end average is like 17.5.
Is it?
Yes.
There you go. Yeah. 18% of air yards, which, at a tight end position, you'll take that. You're fine with that. I really like him. The price is up there, but I don't think it's insane given how involved he's been. If you were trying to separate, like if you were trying to rank these guys, you can talk captain, utility, or just overall exposure to Diggs, Cook, Kincaid, and Davis, all of whom are $7,400 and above. How would you rank them? Is it Diggs, Kincaid, Davis, Cook?
So we're just doing essentially the Buffalo skill position players and excluding Josh Allen?
The expensive ones, not Josh Allen. Yeah.
So I think Diggs is the best one. And I would try to get him if possible for small fields, stuff like that. I think big tournaments is where the conversation gets a little interesting. So I'll say for small field, it would be Diggs 1. Then for me, it's going to be Kincaid 2. I think James Cook 3, and close things out with Gabe Davis. For large field, I would just flip Diggs and Kincaid at the 1-2 spot. I think because of the duplication stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What about how easy is it going to be, or how difficult is it going to be to captain people like players like Diggs and Allen today?
It's challenging. You're basically locked into using Troutman or Lil Jordan Humphrey, unless you're willing to forego one of the guys. Like, one thing you could do is use Diggs as the captain, no Allen, and then you can play more studs. But I don't really feel good about those lineups having Diggs and not Allen, and vice versa. Does Allen access his ceiling without Diggs? Maybe it's a little more likely because Allen can punch touchdowns in on the ground. He can throw to other receivers. So maybe I'm kind of talking myself into an Allen captain without Diggs in the flex, and then you can jam most of the other studs in like the 7K to 10K range. I still think it's challenging to do both, if that makes sense.
I think it's pretty tough. Gabe Davis is just one of those guys that is really tough to pin down. You could go ahead and say that this guy is just now he's the wide receiver 3 and he's not going to he doesn't get there on most weeks. And then he just ends up being the guy. So from a captain perspective, I still do think there's something there when you're talking about a guy that he does have those games. He still does have Josh Allen. There's still something to be said about that. We have him, though, as like the most negatively leveraged player on this slate, which is pretty crazy. But only 3% captain ownership for Gabe Davis today.
Yeah, I think the big question with Gabe Davis is how often do you think he accesses that ceiling? And is he under-owned enough to start taking shots on him? For small field stuff, it's not even a consideration. Just find your way up to Kincaid. It's basically just this large field conversation. Where do you think his ownership comes in? Is that low enough for you to take a stab on a guy like Gabe Davis? Where we currently have it, it's not low enough for me. Combined, we have him around 22% between captain and flex, which is still relatively owned. So he's not single digits by any means. Personally, I'm going to be pretty underweight to Gabe Davis tonight. Obviously, this will change throughout the day. So check it live before lock, see what happens where projections update. But as it stands right now, I would be underexposed to Gabe Davis in tonight's game.
Do you have any thoughts on the Patrick Surtain matchups today?
I don't. They do a great job moving Diggs away from good corners. Even if it's like a shadow matchup, they'll use him in motion and stuff. So I don't anticipate seeing like a Surtain on Diggs exclusively, if that makes sense. And a lot of teams aren't just exclusively shadowing these days either.
Yeah, it just gives too much away.
Yeah.
All right, but I want to run these sims here before we flip this over to the NBA strategy show with Josh and Adam coming up next. But before we do, give me your thoughts on the discount players for Buffalo, because we spent a lot of time on it for Denver. I think because so many of those guys are, in that minimum salary range. But now you've got essentially nobody to talk about at tight end, right? There's no one else other than Dalton Kincaid to discuss, unless you think, Quentin Morris is going to be the guy we should be getting into. And then Deontay Hardy barely played last week. Outside of that, it's, Latavius Murray behind James Cook. They almost split opportunities last week. And then Khalil Shakir, who's priced up, and Trent Sherfield. I mean, that's what we're working with.
You broke it down pretty well, honestly. And I don't think this takes too much time to discuss, actually, so it makes sense. Hardy is just out of play unless you're playing the Millie Maker or something of that size. Same thing with Quentin Morris. These are guys you're just betting on maybe seeing a snap or two and catching a pass on those snaps. Sherfield is somewhat interesting at his price, but he's not being used much. They've basically gone all the way to Khalil Shakir. Of these cheaper plays, Khalil Shakir is my favorite, but he's still not free. He's 4,400. It's just with him, you've seen the snap share rise drastically. So last week, 41 snaps, 35 routes. That was out of 47 total dropbacks. So pretty healthy role for Shakir. But the problem is, I definitely prefer playing Kincaid and these studs over him. So I find myself more often than not going to the stars and scrubs build and playing like a Troutman over him. And then I guess last one, Latavius Murray. He's sort of in this tier with McLaughlin stuff. If you find yourself with the 1,800, I think Murray's fine. I would play Murray over Troutman. But a lot of my lineups just don't have that 1,800 left. A lot of them are forcing me down to Troutman, if that makes sense. So Murray, I think, is a fine pivot in that range if you find yourself with the salary up there. Honestly, he's right there with McLaughlin and Troutman. I don't see there being much difference between these guys, other than a lot of my lineups not having the salary to get them.
Yeah, with Murray, you're clearly banking on a goal line touchdown, but it's doable.
Yeah, he gets a lot of those opportunities. Cook is small, so a lot of times they just use the big back down there.
Let's take a look at the Sims, and then we will build a lineup ourselves, as we always do. Appreciate you guys being with us and hanging out throughout this. By the way, we got over 400 people. There must be 18. There's 18 people out there, Matt, that can hit that thumbs up, get us to 100. I can't think we don't have that out there.
Yeah, I believe in you guys. I atoned for my sins earlier.
My man, appreciate you. I did as well. The moment I jump in, the moment we start this show. All right, let's pull it up. First thing I want to look at, I just want to see who the most. I wanted to see what the captains look like as far as Mike. What did you run, by the way? Did you run 30% payout? All right, 10,000 in the contest generator, 30% payout. What the contest generator is doing is trying to replicate the field, right? Then you go to the lineup simulator, it sims these thousands and thousands of times. And that's where you see top 10 percentage cash percentage, win percentage, all of that. And then you're getting the simmed ROI, the pre-simmed ROI on all of these lineups. That's what it's doing. It's like a super advanced lineup filtering process. By the way, dude, did you see Short Gamer TV the with the Sims tools yesterday?
Yeah, won the Millie.
Won the Millie. And another guy in our Discord won the $3.20 max for 100K with the Sims tool yesterday.
Yeah, it's awesome to see, man. The tools work.
Yeah, another guy took down 5K. We had the Sims tool was all over the big DAX stacks, all over it yesterday.
Yeah, and I'm a dummy, and I purposely, sometimes you can gain an edge in projections, and sometimes you can outsmart yourself. And I brought all my DAX stuff down because I think he stinks. You can see how that worked out for me.
I also just fucked myself there. Yeah. But at least we had some subs rocking the avatar.
Yeah, good job, guys.
Using the $1 million, $100,000, 5K. I mean, on every level, the tool just absolutely smashed yesterday. So let's see what we're getting. Mike, do me a favor, since we're running short on time. Go to exposures. And I just want to see what our captain exposure looks like. So favorite 150. Go to exposures. By the way, link to all of these, guys, whether you want the Sims package, the Max package, which is all of our tools, no add-ons necessary. Not just the Sims, but every tool on the site. for NFL, or the Sims data package, which everything is the same except you can't generate as many contests in the contest generator. That's the only difference. Go to just flip by position. I want to see our highest captain ownership. Man, you can. All right, whatever. Scroll. I mean, you'd have to go in and filter it. It's fine. Stefan. Wow. So, all right, Matt, we still have. It looks like captain ownership is still mostly occupied, not mostly, but very occupied by the top Bills players.
It looks like outside of them, you're getting, just looking at some of the flex guys, like Bass is pretty high for us. Murray. So it looks like it's kind of, I wonder if a lot of these lineups are like Diggs, Allen, double kicker, and this mid-range rather than, going the stars and scrubs, which looks like it might be the case. And I mean, Mike did do a pretty big field. So I think most of the ownership is going to be like those Troutman. These just might be like highly leveraged,
And he did 30% payout to first as well, which makes a difference.
Yeah.
Like just do me a favor, Mike. Go position where just go scroll over, do that filter. Yeah, no, you were right there. No. You were right there. Click that filter. Go down filter. And then CPT. All right, now we can see Wilson. Okay, so 10% Javonte at captain. We're slightly above the field there. 9% on Cook surprises me. 9%
surprises me too.
Yeah, right? 9%. By the way, guys, you can do ROI boosts. You can boost up or down these players. And on the main slate or any other like multi-game slate, you can boost or deboost stacks as well. Like Courtland Sutton, I think, Matt, I would probably boost him up at captain a little bit. I think I'd want a little bit more Courtland Sutton just because of that salary.
Yeah, I would too. And like, this is where you can use your own opinions if you have them, your informed opinions. It can be really good if you think there's a hole in projections somewhere. Or you could deboost Dak Prescott and go broke. Like,
dude, I was just going to say, or you could look like an asshole as we did as people are winning $1 million.
That's literally what I did yesterday.
Me too.
Had a ton of Dak Prescott, went into the ROI pool and just deboost. And
I would take you a step further. I didn't just do that. I filtered out the QB +3 Dak stacks. I just fucked up, man. I should have trusted it. I didn't think they were going to throw 40 times. I really didn't.
No, I mean, like I'm just a dummy, man. You can look back, and especially if you're playing a large field. I was playing a lot of large field stuff. Pollard was going to be extremely owned. So you have an access point to a massive team total that's not unknown, but relatively unknown compared to what we were going to see with Pollard, man. Just being a dummy. But anyway.
My two best lineups, the only reason I didn't get totally annihilated were Dak lineups. So I didn't avoid it entirely. I just should have trusted it and been like onslaught. All right. Anyway, we got to go because the NBA show is coming up. I'll go first. Dalton Kincaid at captain.
Love that. I'm going to throw Allen in.
All right. So we have Dalton Kincaid at captain. And then you're going Josh Allen. I'm going to go Courtland Sutton.
Okay. Love Sutton. We're going to need to save some value somewhere. I think it just depends if we want to go all the way down or not. I'm going to play someone I think will be a little contrarian instead of playing the, Troutman stuff. Let's go with Latavius Murray.
All right. Latavius Murray. Fine with me. So no James Cook, but we do have Murray. I'm going to go Javonte.
Love Javonte. So that puts us at a pretty good spot to finish.
I'd personally go Gabe. It's a Diggs fade, and now you have Gabe Davis and Dalton Kincaid at captain.
Yeah, I think you're right. I like that too.
It's not bad, right?
No.
Or if you wanted to, you could go Russell Wilson there too, but I like it. Anyway, hey, follow Matt at Matt_Gajewski, me at Laffy_D. Remember, links to everything, whether it's Owner's Box, Vivid, or any of our tools in the description. If you want to check them out, you're watching after the fact. Right here on the channel, coming up. NBA strategy show with Josh and Adam. I'm over at Laffy_D on Twitter. Thanks as always to Mike for producing this one and to you guys for watching and supporting the show. Appreciate it. Peace.